So I know that you were talking about the cancel culture. Um, we talked about the cancel culture versus the principled left. Do you want to give your explanation of the cancel culture versus the principled left?
Yes, so I think it's important to note that the people on the right, the Ben Shapiros of the world, want to make the left generally and collectively synonymous with cancel culture, and that's utterly false, because the whole idea of cancel culture kind of sort of even goes against the principles of being on the left, against the struggles of the left over the past half century, the past 50, 60 years, here in the United States specifically. And the idea of cancel culture does tiptoe into infringements on freedom of speech. So I think there are two camps. There's the principled left. I'm talking the Noam Chomskys, the Zaid Jalanis, these types of individuals. Noam Chomsky and Zaid Jalani both identify as being on the left. Matt Taibbi, who all are staunch advocates for the basic principle of freedom of speech. I don't have to agree with what you have to say, and I will strongly, in some cases, disagree with what you have to say, but I'll defend your right until the end of, until my last breath for you to be able to say it. I'll defend that right of yours. Then you have the people, I'm talking the college campus, woke culture types, and I'm not trying to stereotype, but that's just how they are sometimes, who, if you say something that's deemed by them socially unacceptable or a faux pas, then they feel that they have to cancel you, they have to banish you all of a sudden. And these things start out innocently, You have the extreme fringe voices, you got the Alex Jones types, and we all say, oh, let's cancel Alex Jones. But what happens? They cannot be biased, right? So they have to cancel someone on the left, so the Alex Jones folks won't say, oh my gosh, they're just biased against conservatives. So, you have the left, or the new left, kind of losing the history or the experience of the left wing of politics here in the United States altogether when they subscribe to these ideas like cancel culture, which start out innocently but can grow and expand into something that's a little more dangerous, almost toxic and malignant.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I realized too with cancel culture, it, and I like how you touched on the two, because I think there's I never thought of it that way, which is that, and this is why I like doing this podcast. You learn a lot, and my thought process is way different. I was once that kind of cancel culture, we should cancel Alex Jones and we should deplatform him and we should absolutely do that because, his thoughts are just so out of this world. And I believe it. I don't agree with Alex Jones. I hate Alex Jones. I don't like him. I hate his commentary. He is absolutely wrong on every single issue. Every right-winger will disagree with me. But I think that I'd rather keep Alex Jones on his platform, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever he is at, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify Podcasts, on wherever, YouTube, wherever. And then I would rather go after him, and he'd give me a hell of a lot more episodes to do on my podcast and more clips, right? I'd like to just go after him and say, here's why Alex Jones is wrong, right? And I think that you do have that college woke type of cancel culture that is, well, obviously we disagree, so we have to cancel him and he can't be on the platform anymore. He can't be doing that. And that creates a dangerous precedent, right? That's what you're kind of saying there, because, okay, we're going to say, you can't do this, you can't say that, you can't say this, you can't say that. But then there's a huge issue where, okay, yeah, you do that, but my issue with that is now they're going to come after people you actually like. So sure, we can cancel Alex Jones, we can cancel Ben Shapiro, we can cancel Charlie Kirk, who, by the way, is an anti-interventionalist. But my problem with cancel culture is, okay, so then what about when it's you? What about when a right-winger says, well, I don't like what Jason says on his podcast. I don't like what Naim and Michaela say on their podcast. It makes no sense, right? And I think that creates a massive problem because they said, well, you canceled us. Now we can cancel you, right? And I think that Noam Chomsky's way of being is actually the right way to be, because I was actually a kind of that woke person that I told you. I wasn't completely that way. I was kind of leaning more towards that way, but sort of in the center. But then Jimmy Dore was on Joe Rogan, and I wish I could play the clip, right? But he basically says, like, okay, yeah, we're going to have free speech. But then the left cancels progressives. The right cancels the left. The left then says demonetize the right. And then now the YouTube algorithms are being attacked because now we're not going to be on the platform because people are coming against us. And I think, Jimmy Dore and Noam Chomsky and J.K. Rowling, although I completely disagree and disavow her statements on the LGBTQ people in the LGBTQ community, I think, they're right when they say, we got to protect your right for freedom of speech. You may disagree with me. You can come and say you disagree with me. It is borderline disrespectful what they're saying, right? But unless you're saying the N-word, unless you're saying really criticizing black people and brown people and Muslim people and everybody else the way that they shouldn't be criticized, then fine, then maybe we should talk about it. But you're expressing your views, and I don't think we should be taking people out just because they have a certain view, right? That's where I am.
Now, I personally worry that this, deplatforming, this idea of diminishing the conversation to what's quote-unquote safe, diminishing the conversation to what's quote-unquote healthy discourse will eventually become, just a monolithic idea.
Yeah.
And everyone will subscribe to this universal idea, which is going to be some sort of centrist, neoliberal type of moderate idea that everyone will subscribe to and go about their way, right? And that's what's going to end up happening. All you're going to be able to see on YouTube is MSNBC, CNN, maybe a little bit of Fox, maybe they're too radical, and then people are just going to have to consume that, and that's not a place we want to be in. You're familiar with the Open Harper's letter that came out that had 158 signatories: J.K. Rowling, Zaid Jilani, Noam Chomsky, Zephyr Teachout, and then some hypocrites, of course, like Shadi Hamid, and Barry Weiss was a signatory on that letter. I laugh at that. But anyway, that letter basically says, and it's a very vague letter, it's quite vague, but it basically says we should be able to have the right to exercise open debate in a healthy way, not being canceled, not being shut down, not being worried that we cannot speak our views without being deplatformed. This idea of open debate has been so reduced, so significantly reduced and diminished as a result of the threat of being deplatformed, the threat of being canceled by the woke mobs. And I don't like to use those far-right words, those Ben Shapiro words, but honestly, some people have become part of this quote-unquote woke mob, this group of people who just want to make sure it's a safe space for everyone, rather just a safe space for them. And that's when you start establishing that snowflake persona, dare I say it. J.K. Rowling, we can disagree with what she had to say, but we should be able to engage her in her thoughts, share discourse with her as to why she came to that conclusion. And overall, in a general sense, just on a comment for on J.K. Rowling, she's been pretty good on progressive issues for the most part. I will say, Barry Weiss, for example, she participated in cancel culture. Remember, she wanted to cancel people that she deemed as anti-Semitic when she was in college. She deemed them as, and I say quote-unquote anti-Semitic. But her signing on to that letter basically gives me provides me the luxury, gives me the right to engage her in open debate as to what defines anti-Semitic. What does it mean to be an anti-Semitic as opposed to being anti-Israeli violations of human rights, and engaging her in that discourse. So that's what we need, open debate. And I disagree with a lot of what Barry Weiss offers up. We don't even have to get into Barry Weiss.
Yeah, so on that, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
No problem.
Yeah, what I think on that with Barry Weiss, we'll start with that. She's the one who was calling Tulsi Gabbard and Assad toady, and then Joe Rogan was like, well, what does that mean? She's like, I don't know. Can JB look it up? Like, if people say it in the New York Times cafeteria. Whenever I say it, they're like, ha, 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 yeah, absolutely, ha, ha, ha. Right? And that's the thing is that I don't think that she did it because she actually believes in free speech and open debate and free free expression of ideas. I just think she's doing it because, I resigned from the New York Times. Let me see where the power is. Let me see where the popularity is, right? And I don't really think Barry Weiss actually means it, especially with how she was in the New York Times, okay? So she's corrupt herself. On J.K. Rowling, I mean, we may disagree with her, but the biggest thing is people might disagree with her, right? But I think the way to get her is, one, she's a billionaire. She doesn't really need us, number one. But number two, what people are going to start doing is, I don't like her beliefs, so I'm not going to go and I'm not going to buy her books anymore. That is perfectly fine with me, because I don't go to Chick-fil-A, number one, for their beliefs because they donated to the Chick-fil-A Foundation, and then they took that money and they gave it to anti-LGBTQ causes. But also their food, they suck. Okay, Chick-fil-A, their milkshakes are bomb as hell and they're easy to drink, right? But their food sucks. Milkshake's great, soda's great. But I think that if people have thoughts they want to express, they should be able to express them without having the fear of being deplatformed. I think we need to be able to, as you say, stop the snowflakiness, and just start having valid debates and just go with it. And if you've got a problem, then don't talk to that person, right? You don't want to engage with them? Fine. But they shouldn't be deplatformed, because that's what Jimmy Dore said. As you said, we're going to have Fox and MSNBC and CNN. That's what they want. They've been deplatforming us. They've been demonetizing us. Just 3 years ago, every progressive show was saying, guys, we're in trouble. That's why they're all on Patreon, because YouTube started messing up the algorithms and messing with them. So where now you don't actually have free speech. So, I don't know. That's my thoughts on cancel culture.